Firstly, starting off with the countries and territories that we have listed for you. These are, of course, the countries and territories that if you fly in from these countries and territories, it will be placed into the quarantine-free system. Now, this list was previously around 46 countries and territories. Over the weekend, the approval had been made for air travel into entering Thailand from 63 countries and territories, as you see on screen. So this has been approved and is effective on the same day as this entire list is effective today on the 1st of November. So that's good news for those traveling from these countries and territories. We have a lot of information, of course, to talk about today. Reopening of the country, adjustment of the measures for the color-coded zones for the provinces, each province, as well as the added list of countries and territories that you see on screen. Of course, we call it the exemption from quarantine scheme or the test and go scheme. So you have on screen there for you 63 countries and territories. Of course, you can find more information from the Facebook page of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as always. I'll move on to the vaccination progress, the update of the number of vaccines that have been administered since the start of our national vaccine drive. Yesterday alone, we inoculated, as you see on screen, over 300,000 doses, making the total number, the accumulated total number of vaccinations in Thailand to over 75 million doses. To be exact, you see on screen there 75,710,277 doses, and you see the breakdown of which being the first, second, or third dose. So 75 million doses to date now. And of course, the percentage of the population and those living in Thailand is increasing day by day. For the general situation, we have 8,165 new confirmed cases. You see that in the infographic on screen in the blue box on the left. As compared to the new recoveries, which is higher than the number of new confirmed cases for today. New recoveries, we have 9,574. Active cases still being treated at the moment is now way below 100,000. To be exact, it is 99,227. We have 55 fatalities, which is around, the fatality rate now is around 1% now. For the issue on zone adjustment, which we recapped briefly on Friday, starting today, there are now remaining 7 provinces in the dark red zone, or the maximum controlled and strict zone, and you have the breakdown of each province there on screen for you. The 7 provinces still remaining in the maximum and strict controlled zone are namely Chanthaburi, Tak, Nakhonศรีธรรมราช Narathiwat, Pattani, Yala, and Songkhla. So a number of them are the provinces in the south, the southern border provinces. And we had touched on that about the situation in the southern part of Thailand, which remains of concern. For the red zone or maximum control zone, we have now 38 provinces. For the controlled zones, we have 23 provinces. You can look at the infographic on screen there. And for the high surveillance areas, we have now only 5 provinces. As for the pilot tourism provinces, or the sandbox program, that numbers 4 provinces now, Bangkok, Krabi, Phang-nga, and Phuket, as well as other districts and areas within another 13 provinces. So not the entire province is considered in the sandbox program, but particular districts within 13 provinces are also considered being piloted in the sandbox program. And within these indicated areas, the food and beverage consumption within restaurants is allowed. Upon the instruction of the CCSA, the Provincial Communicable Disease Control Committees will issue further area-specific instructions. Now, the aforementioned 17 provinces, meaning the pilot program, have convened and discussed with the Ministry of Public Health, Interior Ministry, and BMA, Bangkok, and agreed on principle upon common guidelines, such as alcohol consumption in hotels and restaurants that meet the SHA standard is permitted before 9 p.m. in Bangkok and is locally instructed in other areas, with a maximum cap of consumption up to 11 p.m. And all pilot tourism areas are tasked by the authorities to inspect the compliance of public health measures with a view to improving from the SHA or SHA Plus by expediting vaccination program for workers in the service sector and strengthening public health measures for those using the services. It bears repeating that there are 13 provinces only in specific districts which have been announced as pilot tourism schemes. So some districts in these 13 provinces are pilot tourism schemes in specific areas, while the whole provinces of 4 provinces were announced as the entire province being a pilot tourism scheme: Bangkok, Krabi, Phang Nga, and Phuket. So again, I'd like to emphasize that the measures for the maximum controlled and strict zones, including no gathering of more than 50 people, theaters and other entertainment venues can operate with more than 50% of audiences in closed venues and no more than 75% of audiences in open venues. Sports venues are allowed to open until 2200 hours. Now, I'd like to move on to the transitioning to the Thailand Pass. As some of you may already know, the Thailand Pass system has already been launched at 9 a.m. this morning on the 1st of November. This means that all travelers entering into Thailand starting today will have to register with Thailand Pass. Currently, the Thailand Pass system is available on desktop version only and will be available on mobile version tomorrow. I'd like to quickly go through the FAQs that we have compiled so far, and you see the sheet there, which you can find also on social media. For the time being, those in possession of an approved COE can proceed to enter Thailand as per their eligible schemes, that is to say the Test and Go scheme, Sandbox scheme, or the Alternative Quarantine scheme. For those whose COEs have duly been pre-approved, they need to submit the required documents by the 7th of November. Otherwise, the COEs will automatically be rejected by the system. They will then need to register with Thailand Pass system to enter into Thailand. Travelers are requested to register with the Thailand Pass system at least 7 days prior to their arrival date in Thailand. And should there be any changes in the details registered in the system, the traveler needs to re-register on the system. Note that the Thailand Pass system is open to those traveling to Thailand by air only. So no RT-PCR test result is required for the Thailand Pass system. However, if the traveler is required to provide a negative RT-PCR test result 72 hours prior to traveling to the airport. For those making multiple trips in and out of Thailand, they can register with the Thailand Pass system multiple times. Those traveling as a family are required to register in the system separately as individuals, provided that all of them are age 12 and above. For those under 12, they can be added on to the same registration as that of their parents under the Personal Information Scheme. So just a little clarification on the SHA Plus and AQ hotels. AQ hotels are for those who are eligible to be used as a quarantine site under the AQ scheme, as well as designated venues to wait for the RT-PCR results under the exemption from quarantine scheme. The SHA hotels and accommodation are for those that meet the Amazing Thailand Safety and Health Administration standards and are eligible to be used as a hotel under the Sandbox program, and designated venues to wait for the RT-PCR results under the exemption from quarantine scheme. Travelers will also be required to download the Mochana application. The list of countries in the quarantine exemption scheme is constantly being revised and updated. So if your country or territory is not currently on the 63 name list that I mentioned in the beginning, you are encouraged to partake in the Sandbox program or the AQ program, depending on the vaccination status. And you have a list up there again for you. So just clarification on the one-night requirement. In practice, the exemption scheme simply comes with a one-night stay for testing purposes. We are indeed determined to reopen the country to our friends and family, but are living in new normal times. So for Thailand, that means that we must do it carefully and safely. So the purpose of the one-night reservation booking in an SHA hotel is to ensure the proper RT-PCR test results. which is included in the cost of the hotel booking. So in fact, in many cases, travelers are paying mostly for the RT-PCR test. And once clear, they are free to go. It should not be considered as a one-night quarantine, but a rest stop, and I repeat, rest stop from your long journey to comply with our efforts to ensure everyone, including our travelers, are safe. So just in closing, just to note that it's worth noting that the reopening of Thailand to tourism, both internationally and locally, must be done in strict compliance with the measures that we have thus far, DMHTTA. The reopening must still be in compliance with these measures. And of course, universal prevention measures. This is aimed at protecting ourselves and the ones we love as we are transitioning towards learning to live with COVID-19 under the new normal. And you have an infographic there for you in closing. So thank you very much for your attention, and we'll see you again on Wednesday. สวัสดีครับ
ครับขอบพระคุณนะครับท่านณัฐพานุ นพคุณรองอธิบดีกรมสารนิเทศและรองโฆษกกระทรวงการต่างประเทศนะครับ